If you are looking to invest in ETFs that have a high dividend yield, then this video is the one for you. I'll be talking you through 6 different income generating ETFs that all provide a dividend yield of between 2.68% and a whopping 7.7%. I'll also be covering everything that is really important when you are choosing which ETFs to invest in. For example, I will be covering fees, annualized performance. I'll also be covering top 3 holdings, the amount of equity holdings within that portfolio. I'll also be covering standard deviation, which gives you a good idea of the risk level of that specific ETF. So in this video, I will be starting with the ETF that has the highest dividend yield and then moving slowly on to the one with the lowest. However, it's really important to watch the whole video because some of the ETFs that have lower dividend yields actually have much higher annualized performance. So it's worth looking at the ETFs as a whole rather than just looking at the dividend yield in isolation. Okay, starting with the ETF that has a whopping dividend yield of 7.7%, and that is the iShares EM Dividend ETF. So the code for this ETF is SEDY and it pays out the dividends quarterly. Most of these ETFs will be paying out dividends quarterly, but I will point out if they don't. 3-year annualized returns for this ETF are just 1.27% and 5-year annualized returns are 1.92%. So that means on average over the last 5 years, every year it has returned 1.92%, which is pretty low, but that is being made up for those high dividend yields of 7.7%. The ongoing charge for this ETF is 0.65% and the 3-year standard deviation is 13.62. With standard deviation and an ETF where all else is the same, you're looking for a lower standard deviation because that shows a lower risk level. So the number of equity holdings in this ETF are 112 and it has total net assets of 495 million at present. So top 3 holdings are Petróleo Brasileiro, VHYL SA and Vedanta Limited. So those are very different top 3 holdings than you are seeing in, for example, the S&P 500 or the FTSE All World, where you're generally always seeing Microsoft, Apple and Nvidia as the top 3 holdings. So they are adding a nice level of diversity to your portfolio. Moving on now to our second dividend ETF, and that is the iShares UK Dividend ETF. The code for this is IUKD and it has an annual dividend yield of 5.45. Dividends are paid quarterly. 3-year annualized returns are higher than our previous ETF at 6.37%. 5-year annualized returns are 6.05%. Ongoing charges here are 0.43% and 3-year standard deviation is 14.07. The number of equity holdings within this ETF are 51 and total net assets are currently 804 million. So you will see, obviously this is a UK ETF, so top 3 holdings are UK holdings. They are HSBC, British American Tobacco and the Vodafone Group. Okay, so the next ETF is actually really interesting and it's one that I'm thinking about adding to my investment portfolio. I might even put it in my Trading 212 account just to keep it separate from my other portfolio. If you would like to try Trading 212 commission-free offering, I will pop a link down below and if you use that link then you will get a free share when you sign up and credit your account. So this ETF that I thought was particularly interesting has not only a great dividend yield, it also has really strong annualized performance. And this is the VanEck Morningstar Developed Markets Dividend Leaders. So the code for this one is TDGB and it has an annual dividend yield of 4.67. Dividends are paid quarterly and 3-year annualized returns are a whopping 15.75%. 5-year annualized returns are 11.88%. Ongoing charge of 0.38%, so nice and low for this ETF. Standard deviation is just 10.64, so actually lower than the previous 2 ETFs, which is great. Number of equity holdings at present is 99, 615 million total net assets, and the top 3 holdings are Verizon, Total Energies SE and Pfizer. Okay, moving on to our next ETF, and this ETF actually has the biggest total net assets, so it is the biggest dividend ETF that I am including in this video, and it is the Vanguard FTSE All World High Dividend Yield. The code for this is VHYL and the annual dividend yield is 3.15, paid quarterly, and 3-year annualized returns are 9.16 and 5-year annualized returns are 8.62. The ongoing charge is the lowest of all of these ETFs in the video, 0.29%. 3-year standard deviation is 8.53 and there are 1,994 equity holdings within this ETF. So this is actually looking pretty good to me too. As I said, this is the biggest ETF in this video with total net assets of 4,159,000,000. Top 3 holdings are JP Morgan, Broadcom, Exxon and ExxonMobil. Okay, so the next ETF that I'm going to feature is another iShares one. It is the iShares MSCI World Quality Dividend ESG. So ESG stands for Environmental, Social and Governance. So this is an ETF that is screened for ESG. Some people are interested in this and some people aren't, but if the returns and dividend yield are looking good to me, then it does pique my interest personally. The code for this is WQDS. Annual dividend yield is 2.73. This is the only one in this video that's paid semi-annually, so not quarterly, and 3-year annualized returns are 10.27, 5-year annualized returns are 9.20, and ongoing charge here is 0.38%. 3-year standard deviation is 8.41, and as I said, where all else is the same with an investment, you're ideally looking for one with a lower standard deviation. There are 180 equity holdings within this ETF, and the total net assets are 662 million. Top 3 holdings are Microsoft, Qualcomm and Apple. And the 6th and final dividend ETF that I wanted to include in this video is the Fidelity Global Quality Income ETF. The code for this is FGQD and it has an annual dividend yield of 2.68. I thought it was worth mentioning here that if you are looking for ETFs that have high annualized returns and are not interested in dividend yields, then please do check out this video where I talk through some ETFs that have whopping annualized returns. One even has an annualized return of over 30%. So if you are more interested in historic annualized returns, then that might be a video that's worth checking out for you. Okay, coming back to the Fidelity Global Quality Income ETF, as I said, the annual dividend yield is 2.68 and this is paid quarterly. Then 3-year annualized returns are 10.8%, which is great. 5-year annualized returns are 11.99%. So just going back to this again, what annualized returns means is that over the last 5 years, on average, every year it has brought in 11.99%. But obviously all of these ETFs are moving up and down in value, and this is simply the average annualized return. The ongoing charge for this is 0.4% and 3-year standard deviation is 9.54. There are 227 equity holdings in this ETF and the current total net assets are 569 billion. What is really important to mention with this ETF is the top 3 holdings are Microsoft, Apple and Nvidia, and these are the top 3 holdings that you will see in the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the US. There is a lot of conversation at the moment around whether the US market is overvalued. That is something I'm considering doing a video on in the future, so let me know in the comments down below if you would be interested to hear my thoughts on that. Please do give me ideas for future videos in the comments down below, because I kept getting comments and questions around dividends, which is why I specifically decided to put together this video. So I do take what you say into consideration and write down all of your ideas for future videos. So thank you so very much for all your kind comments and for taking the time to watch. Have a really lovely day. Bye bye.